Welcome to the sales week. Now guys, this is where I get most excited about running an agency, and really this is what I'm most excited to teach you guys is sales. And we're really going to be going through everything from A to Z within sales alone, and I'm going to be giving you just a ridiculously powerful and effective sales script. But before we get to that point, we need to go through some kind of foundations, and really just so you guys can understand just the dynamic of sales and whatnot. But before we even get to that point, we need to discuss pricing, because that's a super important kind of part of the sales, right? If your pricing isn't on point, then really it doesn't matter how much it doesn't matter how well you sell them. It doesn't matter how well you do your sales or how well you structure things. If your pricing isn't congruent with what genuinely makes sense for the brand and the client on their end, it doesn't matter. Again, as I said, it doesn't matter how good your sales is, you're not going to get the client. So we need to figure out pricing. So this is what we're going to be covering in this module. How much should you charge? Well, first things first, let's look at what is your minimum, okay? How much should you charge? Really depends on quite a few things, but let's first figure out what your actual minimum is. What can you not go any lower than? Well, your minimum service fee is how much your contractor charges you plus 100%. So for easy numbers, let's say your contractor charges you $1,000 per month per client. Your minimum is $2,000. You do not go any lower than what your contractor charges you plus 100%, okay? This is simply because anything lower than it really just doesn't make sense for you to do anything on your end. And also, if your team member's making more money than you, then you're not, again, it goes back to the whole thing of you don't really own a business, okay? You're not the owner, you're more of an employee to them than he is to you, you know what I mean? So you need to, first things first, figure out your minimum, okay? Now, this doesn't mean to say you have to charge your first client this amount. It just means that you cannot go any lower than it, okay? And I think, again, this is another kind of aspect where a lot of people really get mixed up on and kind of confused on, is that they think, okay, my minimum is, $2,000, for example, easy numbers again. Well, that's what I need to charge my first client. Well, no, it isn't what you need to charge your first client. It's just the fact that, you don't want to be going any lower. If you have the confidence, if you feel confident that you can sell the client for 3, 4, 5,000, go ahead. You're still going to be paying a contractor 1,000, but go ahead, charge more. It's just that for majority of the time when people start out, they don't feel comfortable charging those higher amounts, so they just want to charge what their minimum is. Again, you guys now know what your minimum service fee is, okay? Now, another really powerful way to base your pricing is just simply what makes sense, okay? And this is really going to vary so much between business to business, but you need to base your pricing off how much is stipulated in the application form questions, okay? So now, again, given you guys have gone through every module up until this point, you would have set up your scheduler in the most efficient and effective way possible. And now that we've done that, you will see that every single time somebody schedules in a call with you and your agency, they have to answer the required questions, right? And one of those questions is, how much are you currently making per month? So if a brand says they're making 100,000 per month, well, then you're going to charge them very, very differently to how you're going to charge a brand who's making around 20,000 per month, okay? If a brand's making around 20,000 per month, I personally wouldn't really go any higher than 2,500 per month retainer. But really, for a brand that's making 20,000 per month, I've personally seen the best conversion rate at around a 2,000 per month retainer, okay? And then if they're at 100,000 per month, well, then that's where you can start charging your 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 per month retainers. Just because, again, as this slide states, that genuinely makes sense. So you need to be you need to tailor your pricing depending on the business you're reaching out. Depending on the business you're on the call with. Okay, again, going back to what I mentioned before, it just doesn't make sense for you to go ahead and charge X X amount for a brand making 100,000 per month, and then charge that same amount for a brand making 20,000. So you need to tailor your pricing depending on how much is stipulated in the application forms questions, okay? And as I say, lowest end, really you don't really want to be working with any brands doing lower than 20,000. And at that point, I say around a $2,000 to $2,000 per month, $2,000 to $2,500 per month retainer is probably the lowest you'd go, okay? Now, more advanced. So when you get more advanced, you will develop what I call a gut feeling. It's essentially where you are able to look at a brand and correctly depict how much you think you can generate them, at which point you can price accordingly, okay? And really that's what it comes down to. And up until this point, base your pricing off logic, okay? So up until this point, base your pricing on what makes sense and what your minimum is, okay? So up until you get to this more advanced section, base your pricing off of, what makes sense. And as I say, what makes sense is looking at how much is stipulated in the application form questions, and then base your pricing accordingly, and what your minimum is. So if you're just super nervous, you don't really feel confident in terms of charging a higher amount, then just simply base the pricing for your first maybe 1, 2, or 3 clients. Just base your pricing off what your minimum is, okay? And now we know what the minimum is. So again, for more advanced, this is where I'm at currently, and this is where a client comes on board. And they, or not on board just yet, they are on the sales call with you, and then from there, I've already done my research on the brand. So, I've got an eye now. I can really see and just essentially depict how much I genuinely think I can generate the brand. If I see a brand and I think, I reckon I'll be able to generate these guys probably around 60 to 70,000 per month, well, then I'm going to go ahead and charge them, 5,000-6,000 per month retainer, because it 100% makes sense, as this slide states, but also I know that I can charge that and still be an unbelievably valuable asset to the brand, okay? And then, conversely, with a brand where I think, it might be slightly harder, it's probably more around the $20,000 profit mark I can make them each month, well, then that's why I'm going to go the lower end, okay, in terms of my retainer. So that's for more advanced, and that's really where you're going to be able to start getting your higher retainers, because you'll be able to see a brand for what it is and really just truly understand how much you genuinely think you can make them. And again, as I mentioned, you'll be able to then correctly charge them, and that's going to actually help with client retention. It's going to help with results, all that type of stuff. But I know majority of you guys going through this course are going to be beginners, so charge your first few clients off what your minimum is, and then from there charge them on what makes sense. If your minimum is too small for you now, if you feel confident to charge them more, then you'll want to kind of level up and go to what makes sense based on how much they're making. Once that you're super confident with that, then you can go to the more advanced, which is where you can start to develop an eye to see how much they're making, how much you think you can make them, and then price your pricing accordingly. Okay guys, super quick module here, but very straight to the point, and really it's very easy once you've got this information. So with that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next module.